I like to joke when we have the kickoff and we break up by industry. And of course, I run the bio stuff. I'm always saying like, anyone who hates revenue, come over over here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter. I'm the head of insights at Carta, and welcome back to the Data Minute podcast. Today, I was honored to be joined by Executive Director of the Berkeley Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center and Chair of the biotech at the Berkeley SkyDeck Accelerator, Darren Cooke. Look, Darren is one of the most impressive people that I've ever met when it comes to helping out biotech founders in particular. We were going to discuss a lot of Carta data around the differences in SaaS and biotech valuations, but instead we went deep on what biotech founders should consider as they're joining an accelerator, the market needs and customer validation differences between biotech and standard startups, and of course, the regulatory implications of beginning a biotech company. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. Let's jump right in. Darren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We will introduce you before this, but I wonder if you could give people a little bit of background on the kinds of things that you do at Berkeley, because you seem to have your hands in many different kind of projects there. So.
Yeah, of course. So I run the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center at UC Berkeley. New kind of center. We just started in 2021. And the inspiration was we have so many great resources on the campus, right? Including Berkeley SkyDeck and the IGI and Baker Labs and Baker Fellows and Citrus Foundry and a lot of resources that support life sciences entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But they didn't talk to each other. Right? They all worked independently. And the idea was like, what if we started a virtual center that helped align incentives and get them basically pointing and pulling in the same direction and working together to maximize the effectiveness?
Sure.
And so this is a donor-funded center. Mark Robinson, David Kern gave a sizable gift to make it possible. And I was the first person they hired to run it.
I think we actually got connected through Berkeley SkyDeck, which is sort of, I don't want to paint the other parts of the accelerator programs at Berkeley incorrectly, but sort of the flagship accelerator at Berkeley, right? So give us a sense of like the cohort sizes and how many companies you're seeing every year and that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah. So Berkeley SkyDeck, like you said, it's a classic startup accelerator. It's in downtown Berkeley. It's a physical space. We have two cohorts every year, 2 6-month cohorts every year. Yeah, each cohort has about 20 to 25 companies.
Yep.
So each of those companies receive a $200,000 investment from the SkyDeck Fund. They get a ton of support, 70 workshops, 800 advisors, a huge demo day, investor introductions, and the program works great, right? And Carta is a great affiliate at Berkeley SkyDeck.
Yes,
Thank you for that.
Absolutely, it's been awesome. I think we've done a couple talks for both the founders and to the advisors actually as well.
Yep.
Because that's always a interesting advisor compensation equity question.
Exactly, right.
But you specifically kind of handled the biotech side of those SkyDeck companies. How many of those companies in each cohort happen to be biotech or life science focused?
Yeah, about a quarter of them.
Okay.
So 4 to 6 companies every cohort. Yep. So a cohort of 20 to 25 will be biotech.
Okay.
And so the inspiration we always had, so a bit of history. SkyDeck started in 2012, originally as just like a drop-in space for Berkeley entrepreneurs, literally a place where they could go and
actual students on campus.
Sit. Actual students on campus. It was in 2015 when Caroline Winnett, the current executive director, came in, reimagined the whole thing, made it into like a real accelerator with 6-month cohorts and advisor pool and programming and a demo day and all this stuff that, suddenly things got real, right? And we had bio companies even then from the early days, but they were just mixed in, right? And what we consistently heard, and I joined as an advisor in 2016, we consistently heard was these companies need different programming, different support, different advisors. On our side, we definitely needed a different selection committee because you need a different group to review applicants.
Like technical talent that have some sort of sense of whether or not this is going to be a commerciomalizable technology.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we started the BioTrack in 2018.
Okay.
So it's now, 12 cohorts in.
We're going to throw up a chart on the screen here. We're showing a little bit of Carta data, just a ranking of pre-seed funding by industry. Over the last 3 to 4 years at Carta, it's been pretty steady. Pharma and biotech takes either the 4th or 5th spot in this list. But as you mentioned, it seems as though the pre-seed experience for biotech companies is actually considerably different than it would be for a SaaS or another company. What sort of programming were you missing that you thought they really needed in order to sort of treat those founders a little bit differently than the standard founder.
Yeah. So the biotech, of course, everyone in biotech is confused about IP, regulatory issues, and reimbursement. Right? So, of course, that programming generally doesn't apply to SaaS companies at all.
For sure.
Right? So they don't care. And the flip side was actually, so they all craved that sort of bespoke programming that was unique to biotech. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, we were making everyone go to the same classes that, and many of them didn't apply to bio at all, right? Like having a social media presence and stuff like this,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And they were getting grumpy about that, right?
Yes.
So that's why we split it up back then.
And so what are the, if you were to boil down one or two main things that biotech founders find particularly difficult about getting off the ground, is it breaking into highly regulated industries? Maybe I'm assuming something about biotech founders that I shouldn't, but are most of them coming from a pure science background? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, you have to learn more of the business aspects than a standard entrepreneur might?
I don't know if that's unique to bio. I think a lot of people who are early stage entrepreneurs have to learn a ton of stuff that they're not familiar with, 100%. Right? Of course. But it's not uncommon, right? We have scientific founders who, they know that they've got something big, but they don't know how to make anything out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was telling you this before, but we've recently started a program at Berkeley to support those founders. So academics, postdocs, grad students, faculty with an idea that they think, I think this is really something that could be worth commercializing and, could conceivably change the world. Right.
Right.
But what do they do? Right. Yeah. And the thing is, consistent with the mission of my center, I would talk to these folks and say, we have a lot of programs to help you, right? Look at this list. I have a list on my website. And unfortunately, the list was kind of long itself, right? And so even these would-be founders would say that's a lot.
Right. I don't really know where to start.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Where should I start? I'd give them some pointers, and consistently they wouldn't start.
Yeah.
They would just go back to the labs and have their grad students do more research. Right.
Yes.
It was
that's the default path, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you're taking a biotech company through the SkyDeck accelerator in particular, when we speak about accelerators broadly, it's always, hey, you need to use this 6 or 8 week period to really improve your traction, your customer list, all that kind of stuff. Is that sort of traction even possible for a biotech company at that stage?
No. Right. Yeah. So I like to joke when we have the kickoff and we break up by industry, and of course I run the bio stuff. I'm always saying anyone who hates revenue, come over here, right? Because the bio companies are not at the stage because they're regulated, and they're not yet allowed to sell anything, and they're reimbursed, which means that there's another step for the most part where someone else is going to pay for it rather than the end user or the consumer. So it gets pretty complicated.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. Regulation and reimbursement is always some of the biggest mysteries for these founders.
And does that regulation process, are they coming in saying, I have a idea for a new drug? Well, actually, let's back up. Mm-hmm. Does biotech encompass all new drug creation and other things as well? What are the standard sort of pathways in biotech?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I think of life sciences. So my center is called the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center.
Right. Life
sciences being therapeutics, diagnostics, research tools, med device, and even some digital health. So this is a pretty broad range.
Very expensive.
When I think of biotech, I'm thinking mostly therapeutics.
Yeah.
Right. And so just for definitions.
Yeah.
And you're right. Each of those subsets have a different challenge.
Right.
Right. They have different customers. They have different regulatory issues. Some of them are reimbursed. Some of them are not. So it's always a bit different between those tracks, but there's a lot of commonalities. That's why we scoop them all together for the BioTrack at SkyDeck.
And when these biotech funds are coming to the end of the SkyDeck program, are they at that point looking to raise outside money?
Yeah.
Immediately? Okay. In order to do, what is the immediate goals for most of those companies?
Oh boy. Okay. So it's going to vary. It depends on the company.
Okay.
What would not be uncommon. And so we just this morning at SkyDeck, I helped our 5 BioTrack companies. And by the way, the demo day is coming up on April 10th. If you're able to join us,
very exciting.
I'll send you an invitation.
Yeah, thanks.
So so we're a couple weeks away from demo day. So they're refining their pitches at the moment. it seems like most of them had a plan for future experiments, animal studies, like whatever makes sense from a milestone standpoint. Basically, we're coaching them and hoping that they, number one, successfully raise money, and number two, that amount of money is going to get them someplace that's interesting to future investors, to the current investors. So we help them refine the milestones. Yeah. But the milestones are totally different, depending on the company.
And does the amount of money that they need, has that risen? Like we've seen round sizes in other parts of venture rise pretty consistently from 2018 to now. They've gone up maybe even close to, I think in the seeds, like 8 million to 13 on valuation, 2 to 3. Are those round sizes getting consistently bigger in biotech as well?
So at least the stage that we're at, so we're purely pre-seed.
Right.
I mean, so that's typically, at least from my experience, at least with the companies that we're seeing go through SkyDeck, it's not going up much. So they're typically raising the same amount.
Okay.
These are companies that are just post grants.
Right.
So all these companies in the space are getting SBIR grants, which from the National Science Foundation, from the NIH.
And that's how much cash does that usually give them?
So phase 1 from NSF is what, $400K?
So yes.
Yeah. This is a non-dilutive, right? I mean, restricted in what you can use it for.
Sure.
But it's still,
you're not giving up equity, so that's pretty
right. Exactly. And then phase 2 from the NSF, I think, is 1.5. So,
wow.
Oh yeah.
So and so get up to close to 2 million.
So we expect companies to be following that, and investors do too. I mean, for logical reasons.
Yes.
Like they're like, why would we be the first money in if you're not going to take the free government money, right?
That makes sense.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the process like to pitch the government on that? This is a really difficult kind of application.
Yeah. So you write a grant proposal.
Yep.
The success rate, I think, on the first time phase 1 NSF SBIR is maybe 30%. So it's not terrible, right? And it can be coached. An organization on the Berkeley campus, QB3, has a great grant writing workshop that I think they run it 3 times a year.
Wow.
So it's actually, I've made it part of my company building program that the companies that we're building do the workshop.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
just because that's important for them to know how to do this.
For sure. And so we get to demo day, and these the biotech companies are pitching obviously probably a different set of investors than the rest of the accelerator cohort.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding those investors? Have more people become interested in biotech over the last couple of years? Like,
I get the impression that they have. So you're touching on something that's a little bit tricky for us because we're running a big event.
Right.
This is at Zellerbach Hall, the main theater on campus.
Yeah.
1,000 people are there.
Right.
I mean, this is like a major production.
For sure.
20 companies are pitching 5 minutes each. 5 of them are bio. Right. Which means that 15 aren't.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which means that a lot of investors see that and say, well, I'm not going to come,
right. That's not my space.
like listen to 15 other pitches.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So we've actually had a bit of challenge to get the right bio investors to actually come to the live event. We're doing really well just getting their interest in terms of, so the whole month before demo day is investor month, we call it, where the fund team, the SkyDeck fund team reaches out to investors. We have a huge database. SkyDeck has become more and more reputable and renowned basically for picking and accelerating great companies. So now a lot of investors want to have pre-demo day calls. So what blows me away, last cohort, the average number of meetings, investor meetings that each cohort company had in the month before demo day was 38 calls.
Wow.
I know. Right?
With 38 separate investors in a single month.
Yeah. So each company did.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're seeing that with our bio teams.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not getting the investors to be at the event. Right. So
that's fascinating that so much of that is becoming like pre-wired. I'm sure that, in accelerators with the brand credibility of SkyDeck or YC, I could imagine that attracts a lot of investors up front. So they're going through these investor meetings, what kind of metrics are they talking about if they don't have revenue to show? Like, how are they proving progress?
Yeah. So typically it's experiments, it's animal studies, it's preclinical work, it's in vitro, whatever, like depending on the tech, it's going to be different, right? Sure. But so investors are looking for huge market, compelling data, right? And great team that knows how to make something out of it.
Right.
So that's kind of generic.
And do they need the team to have both scientific and business expertise, or are they willing to just bet on scientists who have a lot of support?
Yeah. So I think that changes. I think especially at the earliest stage, a lot of investors are forgiving a bit if you don't have a complete team, if you don't have like the stellar CEO who's built companies and sold them already.
Sure.
But I think they realize at some point you're going to get one.
Yes.
You're going to need that.
Right.
But that's unique, I think, just to the super early stages.
And do the biotech founders that you work with, do those founding teams tend to be much larger than the other accelerator companies?
It's 2 or 3 people.
It's just 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think a good example of this is, I mentioned before, we built 3 companies out of ideas in labs at UC Berkeley last year. Let's see. One of them was headed by the chair of bioengineering and his postdoc. Neither of them, were going to be full-time founders on the company.
Yeah.
But we backed them and we put them through programming and through SkyDeck actually, and through a class I teach on market needs finding, a bunch of different resources on campus, and then we helped them find a CEO.
Right.
And they did. And there's somebody in place.
And are there, I wouldn't call them professional, like roving biotech CEOs that are just trying to attach themselves to the best new tech? Does that class of person exist?
So there are a lot of people who are successful, who have built companies before, who have had a recent exit. That's the classic.
Yes.
A recent exit.
Right.
And they're looking for the new gig.
Right.
Right. And so interestingly, the way we found the current CEO of this company, Asparaglue, was a recruiter.
Wow.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
We used a recruiter.
That's it. I'm glad that's an option. It sounds like a totally different path.
To be honest, I didn't think that was going to work.
Right.
But it worked really well.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I wanted to double back. You mentioned the market needs finding course because I think that's fascinating. So much of the pre-seed thing when it's talked about broadly in tech is, finding the right customer, fine-tuning the idea.
Yeah.
What does that look like for a biotech company?
Yeah.
How does someone who's just working on the core science even begin to approach the end customer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the tricky thing with biotech, especially therapeutics, diagnostics, med device, is that there really is no one end customer, right? So what I teach for this innovation core program, NSF, NIH runs what we call the I-Core program, which is classically a market needs finding class, right? So the NSF version takes anyone from any area of tech. I teach just a life sciences version of it and have actually revamped the course a little bit to understand that the market is more complicated than other areas of tech. There's no just like one customer, one person to buy stuff. And so I have a new way of looking at it where there's 5 stakeholders that every biotech, med device, med tech company needs to understand. And luckily, they all start with B.
Okay, great. 5 ways.
Yeah, so the patient, the provider, the payer, a partner, almost everyone needs someone else to work with. And then, unfortunately, because the FDA didn't start with P, I called it the permitter.
We'll allow it. Yeah,
right.
Close enough.
Yeah. So I teach a boot camp version of this class where I make each of these would-be companies, I'm running it this week, understand and hypothesize about each of those 5 people, right? Because they're people.
Yeah.
And then what are they doing today? And what would motivate them to do anything differently in the future?
Is there one P that consistently is much more difficult to ascertain than the others?
It's the payer.
Okay.
Right. Oh yeah. That's always the tricky one. The tricky one for startups is to understand how is anything reimbursed. Right. So the payer being the government, CMS, private payers, whatever it is.
Insurance.
Right.
Exactly.
I think a lot of companies, frankly, just sort of, it's like, I don't know how this is going to work. Surely if we build something great, someone will pay for it. Like they leave.
That's the approach.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That sounds
right.
Quixotic, I'd say. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they get a little bit of advice up front that says that. So when you're talking about the FDA, the permitter in particular, are there like exits the accelerator, gets maybe some cash infusion? Are they immediately going through FDA trials and like involved in that regulator's process, or does it take a while to get to the FDA stage?
Yeah. So typically at the stage that our companies are at, they would be having what we call pre-sub meetings with the FDA, meaning sort of informal meetings with the FDA just to understand what they're going to be looking for and what the trials are going to look like. So they're at that stage, and they're still doing the basic toxicity studies and like safety studies and things like this, ready to get like into the clinics. But they're not there yet.
Does the FDA have the resources to meet with all of these companies?
It's surprising, actually. Yeah. So we have an advisor who was at the FDA for 25 years, and her advice to our companies, she meets with all of them. Yeah. Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
She's like, just reach out. They're really friendly.
Right? I know. Friendly neighborhood friendly.
Exactly.
That's great.
Right. And it's funny. They really are. Their emails are on the website. Like program officers' emails are on the website. Right. They're happy to have a 20-minute pre-sub meeting where you can go over stuff, and they give you informal, non-binding feedback, but still.
Great. From the people that you're going to need to impress later on anyways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. These trials, I'm sure it's completely different depending on the thing, but how many, when you're going into your first FDA trial, how many participants or involved parties are there when you're going through that? Like, how big of a deal is that trial?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Right. Again, just because the companies I work with aren't at that stage.
Right.
And I have to admit, I kind of take so typically you'd raise a Series A before going into the clinic.
Okay.
Right. And so what we want our companies to do is get in a stage to raise like a serious seed round, which would lead into a Series A. Mm-hmm. A lot of our BioTrack alumni have done that.
Yeah.
But I'm not involved anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Are most of your pre-seed founders then raising on the standard safes and convertible notes, or like are there preferences in biotech investors that you've seen between those two instruments?
A safe versus a note?
Yeah.
They're almost all safes.
Okay.
So, sometimes we'll price the round. Depending on the investor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Even within the accelerator cohort, the first round out of that.
Coming out of the accelerator.
Yeah.
So I used to run med device and digital health at Life Science Angels, which is a sizable seed stage investment group, an angel group in Silicon Valley. We always price the rounds. I know. Right.
And do you think that they're still pricing the rounds?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still a member.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so, and part of that is because of LSA, Life Science Angels, relationship with a major law firm.
Right.
Makes that easier to do.
Yeah.
And there's a view with the investors that pricing the round is better from their standpoint.
Sure.
Just because you'll lock in some liquidation preferences and stuff that you otherwise wouldn't know about, right?
Sure.
And if it was just a safe.
Yep. Do you find that there are reasons why a biotech company might prefer a priced round? Are there is it better to do priced in biotech, or are there perhaps the investors in biotech might be more conservative? I guess is maybe an idea that is out there in the world. I'm not sure whether or not that's true.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. So safes are totally good.
Safes are fine. And I think most of the companies graduating from SkyDeck, if they get investment, it'll be on a safe.
Do you have an idea of what percentage of them get investment, end up becoming
close to 70%?
Wow.
I know. Right. So something we're very proud of.
Yeah.
So, one of the things if you come to demo day, you'll see this, that the companies are really good.
Yeah.
Right. And so people come up to me and say, wow, you guys must do a really great job, right? Because that was fantastic. Like, well, we do a great job, yes. But the thing is, what people don't realize is that we got 2,000 applications for the 20 spots,
right?
Which means that they were pretty good when they came in.
They're only polishing already,
right? Exactly.
Yeah,
we do help a lot. Yeah, but we're lucky that we have that sort of deal flow that gives us a lot of options.
How about so you spoke a little bit about demo day broadly. How about the pitch from a biotech company on stage there? Is it does it follow the same sort of beats as the rest of them, or is it kind of completely different?
Yeah, it's very similar.
Okay.
So it's funny because we were just looking at the pitches this morning.
Yeah.
There's always the tension between how much data are you going to put?
Yeah. How much science can you put in a
5-minute pitch?
Yeah.
And also given the audience, right?
Sure.
So a bunch of general investors in the room who maybe actually are interested in a crossover, right? They'll say, wow, that seems really impressive. We're not normally in the space, but want to learn more, perhaps.
Sure.
But you don't want to scare them off, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But at the same time, you want to put enough data in there that the experts in the room think, okay, well, this is real, right?
Yeah. Is there a preference among your companies between, if they were offered a similar size safe between a biotech specific investor and a generalist investor, would they always go with the biotech specific one? Is there an advantage to?
I'm not sure there's a rule there.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course everyone's looking for smart money, right? Meaning, so if you're a biotech investor with a lot of connections, sure. Yeah. Maybe that would be a better deal just because of the investor makeup.
Yep.
But that depends.
And I guess, one of the things that is amazingly clear from this conversation is that Berkeley as an institution has put so much time and effort and resources into this part of the market. Are you aware of other schools that are going this far to sort of commercialize biotech, or you think Berkeley's kind of on the front wave of that?
Yeah. So I like to think we're on the front wave of it. So I've been, once we started this venture grant program, the company building program on campus, I've talked to and looked for and talked to a number of different institutions, just saying, look, I really want to know, is anyone else doing this?
Yep.
Is anyone else doing something similar to this? Because I kind of want to copy it.
Yep.
Right?
Sure.
And I have an inkling that maybe something similar is happening at Harvard. I have an inkling that something similar is happening at Stanford. But I think we're the first to do like really the whole company building angle of it, like really like a venture studio company formation side of entrepreneurship from an academic setting.
Wow. I mean, that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah.
For blazing the path. Yeah.
Right.
I guess to wrap up, I wondered if you had any words of advice for, I know there are probably going to be some early stage biotech curious founders.
Yeah.
Any words of advice if they can't end up taking any of the classes from Berkeley or going through the accelerator? What are some standard sort of recommendations that you would have for them in order to judge A, that market needs or commercial viability, and then B, any tips or tricks on getting started in the regulatory pathways?
Yeah. So the I-Core class that I teach is mostly focused on UC founders, meaning so the class I'm teaching right now has 8 teams in it. I swear, I think 6 are from UCSF. 1 is from Berkeley, right? The other's from Stanford. So the point being is that we actually take founders and would-be founders from elsewhere. I mean, so that's not restricted just to Berkeley.
Yep.
You can get a lot out of just the same sort of course materials by reading books from Steve Blank. I wrote a Medium article about the Life Sciences Venture Canvas, which I'm now using in the I-Core class. There's actually a lot you can do just by poking around and reading relevant materials.
Sure.
But if you're able to, like the big thing is, if you're able to sign up for an I-Core class, like Innovation Core class, either sponsored by NSF or by any university that are taught across the country, so at different universities, that's where you would start.
Okay.
So even if the university doesn't have a life sciences specific version of it, like we do at Berkeley, it's still, that's the starting place.
That's going to stand you in good stead, regardless of where you're beginning from. Amazing. Well, Darren, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Let's do it again too. I can't wait to attend demo day. Thanks for the
Okay. Yep. Good.
Yeah,
I hope to see you there.
Okay. Fantastic.
All right. Thanks, Peter.